Thanks, Mike, and thanks, BMO team, for having me here today. Glad I could make it. I think I have the worst Facebook Marketplace story anyone could ever have. A lady picking something up from my house last week actually put her car in reverse and drove through my garage. So I've been dealing with that. So that's been quite a bit of fun. But I'm here. I'll give you a quick intro into Wesgroup Properties. We're a Vancouver-based family-owned real estate organization. We've been active in British Columbia since 1960, and we're one of Western Canada's largest private real estate organizations and asset holders. We're vertically integrated. We do all of our real estate operations and activities ourselves, including sales, marketing, construction, finance, land development, and asset management. We're a 320-person organization. We've built over 7,000 homes across Metro Vancouver and currently have 50 active projects around the region with 2.6 million square feet under construction with a total construction cost of about $2 billion that we manage. And over the past decade, we've been one of CMHC's largest partners in BC in the RCFI ACLP program. Not doing very good with that button. We focus on large, mixed-use, transit-oriented master plan communities. Our scale likes to be between kind of 1,500 and 2,500 units, well located in Metro Vancouver core cities. So we've got a 140-acre master plan in Vancouver called the River District, about 6,000 people living there today, future home to about 18,000. Another one in Port Moody, which is the largest assembly of single-family homes completed in British Columbia. We assembled 59 single-family homes, which I wouldn't advise doing again. That'll be home to about 2,500 people, and then we're completing a mixed-use master plan in New Westminster on the SkyTrain beside the hospital right now, home to a couple thousand people, and have another large one in Surrey, BC's fastest growing city, which will be another 2,500 units or so. As it's been mentioned, we started a YouTube channel and had to figure out how the heck that worked. So let me walk you through kind of how we got there. 95% of housing in Canada is built by the private sector, and collectively it's a huge part of the economy. In BC, it's about a fifth or more of GDP, bigger than mining, bigger than manufacturing, bigger than agriculture, bigger than forestry, and shockingly bigger than the public sector at this point. The housing crisis is a cost of delivery crisis, and it's a choice. Nice to have code changes and government fees and charges and the way that they're levied. We started joking in our office, we're losing track of infrastructure costs and meme coins because they're starting to look the same. Metro Vancouver development cost charges between 2015 and 2027 will have gone up nearly 2,000%. To put that in perspective, this is something we've been talking about in our office, the theory of planning to the margins. And I think over the last 20 years or so, what's happened is planning policies shifted from outcomes-focused planning to basically re-engineering where profits end up. And I think in theory, this was a good practice at the time. Democratizing the increased land value from redevelopment schemes to pay for community amenities, community centers, things like that. But it's taken a turn and it's gotten out of control where, at least in BC, our planning policy starts with a financial analysis of how much money can be extracted. And where that lands, this is from a project we're working on right now, 2,500 unit master plan. So let me walk you through the math. So for us to have the privilege of taking $2 billion worth of risk to build 2,500 units of housing on a SkyTrain station, we would be paying $206 million in upfront government fees and charges. The residual land value of that site, based on those policies, would be $41 million. It's currently a surface parked retail strip mall, which if we renovated would have a residual land value of about $60 million. So to take $2 billion of risk and spend 10 or 15 years working on this thing, we would pay $200 million for the privilege of reducing land value by about $20 million. This is an absolute failure of policy and an absolute loss of objectives around housing. Which is why we started saying the housing crisis is a choice. Government in Canada now earns more from a new home that's built than the builder who took the risk and delivered it. And we've lost complete sight. Instead of focusing on delivering amenities, delivering infrastructure, and delivering housing, the system's been designed to extract revenue. Policies set up to squeeze project margins until they aren't viable, and there's no room for flexibility built in. I kind of lost my mind the other day, I guess before my house got crashed into. I saw that the city from my chart, the city of Coquitlam, which traditionally has been a great place to do business, they've put their density bonus rate on sale until July 31. So they set it based on land value, and they say they track to market. Well, they haven't adjusted it in a year, and we all know what's happened. So instead of the 50% reduction, which the market says it should be, if you get a building permit by July 31st, they'll give you a 15% discount. And I'm losing sight of if we're talking about housing, if we're talking about Spirit Halloween at this point. It's been mentioned before, but the housing market is really complex, and how housing gets built and managed is even more complex, which has led, I think, to our industry's challenge in actually explaining complexity and having effective change result from that. So we have at least four sets of government that impact us on a housing front. Federal government sets big picture policy. Provincial government sets, codes, environmental regulations, contaminated sites, landlord-tenant legislation, major growth management frameworks. Then, most urban regions have a regional government. They probably deal in infrastructure, regional land use, transportation. And then locally, we'll have a myriad of municipalities with official plans and community plans and zoning, entitlement processes, et cetera. And so in practice, we work in Metro Vancouver. Most of you here work in the GTA. It's pretty mind-boggling, the amount of stuff we end up dealing with. So Builder in the GTA deals with 25 municipalities, 4 regional governments, the provincial policy, and the impacts of federal policy. In Metro Vancouver, very similarly, 21 different municipalities. We get the benefit of having 21 variations on energy step code and sustainability initiatives and affordability measures, regional policy impacting us as well, provincial policy even more, and federal policy as well. So this is the last way you would ever design a framework to do any type of manufacturing production. So what this leads to is just a myriad of uncoordinated policy. We took a snapshot in 2023, in June, I believe, of just how many active policy consultations our office had been contacted about that could impact real estate in Metro Vancouver. 16 of them were federal, 53 provincial, 8 regional, and 121 different municipal policy changes, not total policies, active considerations for new policy and changes. And that was a bit of a watershed moment for us where we can't do this anymore. We have a team in our office. I certainly don't work in home building anymore. I just work in policy. And we've started calling this defensive development, where we're trying to protect our assets from the impact of policy. And it became a multi-person full-time job. And obviously the status quo wasn't working. We're a really hard industry to interact with for government. There's thousands of builders across Canada. There's hundreds of municipalities. They're all pulling in different directions. There's not a single effective voice in Canada to get housing built. And we're in this really tangled, inefficient environment. And so we decided, for our own sanity, or maybe to make ourselves feel better, we're gonna just do things a little bit differently. And one of the things we had to focus on was, how do we simplify the message? Because we tested ourselves by talking to our wives and our moms and uncles and aunts about housing issues, and no one cared about Sustainability Policy Amendment 43C. And so that became our focus. How do we actually change this? So the first thing we did was we started comparing our industry to other industries in British Columbia. And this was a couple of us sitting around doing these in Microsoft Word, which is pathetic, but it actually churned out some big numbers on LinkedIn. So in BC, the video game industry employs 8,700 people. It's less than 1%. Every payroll period, they get a 17.5% tax credit on their wages for employing people in the video game sector. They have access to federal and provincial SR&ED credits, and they're eligible for direct grant funding via the Canadian Media Fund. Real estate and construction, well, we're more than 1/5 of GDP, and we have a myriad of taxes, fees, charges, and demand-side initiatives to limit the effectiveness of our market. The film industry gets a 36% tax credit for all production in British Columbia. They employ 35,000 people compared to 500,000 people in the real estate and construction sector. I always like using the example of what our industry can actually do when we get support, and I use the ACLP RCFI programs from CMHC, not a grant, low cost financing. We pay it back and the government makes money, and it has churned out the best period of rental housing construction in decades. This brought me some short-term LinkedIn fame, which I was never seeking. Mike Moffat actually posted this on Twitter, and it was around the GST holiday that Trudeau brought in. So no GST on chips, booze, candy, but you pay GST on that new home to move your family in. Pretty sad state of affairs for Canadian housing. And then I came up with this one morning, and it had way more foresight than I thought it would, because it was pre-tariff announcements, but the start of the talk. And the joke was Canada already puts tariffs on its own housing, which we do. It's extreme fees and charges, and it's completely broken regulatory environment. There's a lot of people that didn't like this one. And then it really kind of got brought home. Pierre Poilievre spoke at the Board of Trade and was speaking to industry in general, not really our industry, more mining. And the message was fire your lobbyists and talk to the people. And that kind of underscored the approach that we're not getting anywhere commenting on these 212 policies through each initiative one at a time. Our message is too complicated, and we have to continue to, share it in a way that's simple. And so therein was born Homes Don't Just Happen. In our office, we believe if you're going to do something, give it a name, because then it seems real. And so we sat in a meeting, and we had to learn how to run a YouTube channel and how the algorithm worked. And our comms manager, Georgie, who I'm sure is listening, just sat there and forced us to simplify again, too complicated, re-whiteboard it. And it was a great process. So we released our first video, Housing Crisis 101, an overview. We didn't really know how many videos we were going to do. And we introduced the problem. Housing's not just unaffordable, it's actually undeliverable. It's too risky, too complicated, and fees and taxes outweigh basically any sector in the economy. And so it started out as a call for change. We actually launched it anonymously, so we hadn't taken credit for it yet because we weren't sure what the reception would be if it came from us. So when it was posted, we actually had billboards in Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, Victoria. We had leaflets and stickers distributed. And we also took the extra initiative of couriering a package of t-shirts and stickers and QR codes to every elected member of federal and provincial parliaments, all of their key staff, their chiefs of staff, and mayors in every basically urban city across the country. We wanted to get them to pay attention to us. Some of them got sent back. Housing video number 2. We really wanted, this is when we started talking about the cost of delivery crisis, and it came out of a simple concept, which we all go to dinners and we talk about real estate because that's all we do, and we probably have to. And someone says, well, it's just too expensive. And you say, well, how much should that apartment be? And well, what apartment? Let's say a 2-bedroom downtown. And in Vancouver, the answer always is between like $750,000 and $800,000 is what people think it should cost. And so we use that concept of this video. So if we worked for free, no profit, and somehow we got land for free, let's say from Build Canada Homes, the cost of delivering that apartment in Vancouver, again, free land, no profit, is $1 million. That's above CMHC's affordability targets. That is above what people in the public think the number should be. And so this really reinforces this is a complete cost of delivery crisis. We cannot solve this problem by just not making a margin. And video 3 came out of talking to Mike Moffat, actually, and we toyed around with the idea of using car manufacturing or farming, and then the tariffs went into place. We didn't want to pick on farmers anymore because we thought people would get upset. But we took a manufacturing mindset of how would the housing framework look if Ford built an F-150 this way? And so they have to design a car, get public feedback on it, get a council of the uninformed to make a decision on the design and focus of that vehicle. No offense to elected officials. And then on top of that, in every city, you're going to have different safety and design standards. So the example of where the gas tank is, Mississauga might mandate USB-C, and Burlington's banned CarPlay for some reason. And that would be the environment that housing is operating in. And it is just completely psychotic. And what we've found through doing this is we've actually had a lot of success simplifying our message by just comparing it to something else, getting out of the details as much as we might want to get into them, and really focus on the message of how do you actually get something built. In the process right now is a video on, basically prefabricated panelized housing using mass timber. Over the last year, we've actually had a pretty smart guy in our office building out a mass timber strategy for us, on the mindset that at some point we're going to be forced to do this, and so we might want to do it. Let's understand it, but if we're forced to do it, let's understand it even better. And so we went and looked at why isn't this scaling in Canada? What are the issues? This and that. Because the absurd reality in British Columbia, where we have one of the best fiber baskets in the world, it's cheaper to buy mass timber from Austria and ship it than it is to get BC wood from 3 hours away. And we went through a process actually of flying around, and we explored buying a mass timber company out of bankruptcy, so we got in it. And what we found is it's the same issues that we have in housing. So panelizing housing products doesn't solve the housing crisis, doesn't change the cost of delivery crisis, doesn't change fees and charges, doesn't change zoning, doesn't change regulatory issues. And what we found on the timber side is there's massive policy issues that go all the way back to forestry policy. How do you harvest a tree in British Columbia that are holding it back? And so we ended up forming the Western Mass Timber Alliance. We got together actually with a mass timber manufacturer, some forestry companies, and we're working on government policy in that world as well. So we spent a lot of time on this. We have no idea what the ROI is. We question the value of our time at points in time. But we actually have gotten a lot of really positive feedback on this approach, the simplification of the messaging. We've also gotten a lot of criticism, particularly from academia, about how reductive we're being, which we always invite them into our office to talk about it, and they never want to come, except Mike comes. And I think right now, it was mentioned in the panel, we've got some green shoots. There's a conversation taking place federally where they've at least acknowledged the link between development cost charges and affordability. The policy proposal is totally inadequate, but at least there's a link. And I think it's very clear we have a massive infrastructure funding problem in this country. Ontario's proposed legislation looks fantastic as a non-expert. In this region, I think harmonizing code requirements is an incredible first step, capping inclusionary zoning requirements, exploring public utility models. And then at the municipal level, there's a lot of really good conversations taking place about timing of DCC payments as well. In BC, at least some early conversations of actually moving those to be paid by the purchaser outside of the project, and it actually creates a much more affordable environment. So what has to happen next? Address the cost of delivery crisis. We've asked government to just leave us alone, stop changing policy. If anything, we need a rollback. Looking ahead, there's a new national model construction code. I don't think they're listening to us because there's 374 proposed changes in that national model construction code. And then, I think we have a real opportunity right now to change GST policy, change the limitations so that it's not just on foreign purchasers, on first-time home buyers. And that policy should go back to its inception when 90% of new housing qualified for that rebate. And then finally, we have to incentivize capital investment back into the country. We have to allow folks who don't live here or aren't permanent residents to invest in new housing in Canada. And there's some great models globally of that we should be looking to. That's all I've got.
Well, I think it's brilliant, and what do we do to help? There's a lot of us in here. I think the message has to get out, and you're doing a good job, but repost it on LinkedIn. We'll find it, repost it. What would help your cause, our cause?
Great question. We've actually debated getting a consortium together to help fund this because we're doing it on our own, so that's something we've debated. We don't really want to give up our editorial control of it, so we probably won't do that. But yeah, I think share it, share ideas, communicate in the same way. I think our industry gets far too technical, because the issues are technical, but we've got to realize we're not always talking to a technocrat. And so the more we share these ideas and talk in this way, I think is really helpful. Thanks very much. That was great.